I'm back in Manchester, in the heart of a modern city. And it feels like a living creature. The layout of the roads, the flow of the traffic, the network of public transport. It's like veins and arteries coursing round a human body. And here's the thing, none of this happened by accident. From the power lines over our heads to the sewers under our feet, the city exists as the epitome of human civilization because to function, it has to be planned. And that takes more than ingenuity, more than money. It takes cooperation, human beings working together for the common good. I want to tell the story now of how in the late 19th century, we learnt to plan cities fit to live in. It was one of the crowning achievements of the Victorian age. We took the chaos of the early industrial slums, and from out of that squalor, through planning, through cooperation, we created an urban environment where people could live and work and relax. And in the process, we learnt what it meant to function as a modern society, all part of a living and breathing whole, utterly interdependent. It's a massive story. So I want to focus this investigation. I want to explain how we solved just one problem that plagued our early industrial cities, the problem of the water supply. You'll remember the story of how cholera broke out in Manchester in 1832. Well, that problem didn't go away. Houses continued to be built without sewers or toilets or running water. Standpipes tapped water from polluted rivers, and so, of course, the cholera came back in waves. In 1849, in 1853, no one knew the cause. Death just seemed a fact of life. But then in the great cholera outbreak of 1853, a doctor down in London made the connection. The cholera was in the water. And that changed everything, because now, with knowledge on our side, there was no excuse but to fix the water supply. And this was everyone's problem. As one newspaper put it, the cholera teaches us our mutual connection. Nothing shows us more forcefully the duty of every man to look after the needs of others. Cholera is God's voice to his people. What inspires me about this story of the transformation of Manchester from a squalid slum into a modern city was that it wasn't just the work of bearded millionaire do-gooders like Titus Salt. It wasn't all imposed from above. It was the work of all kinds of men and women from all social classes. There was a man, for instance, called Charles Rollie. He lived here in Ancoats. He was the son of a humble picture framer. He was so fired up about the problem of sanitation in the slums, he stood for election to Manchester's City Council, and in 1875 he became a councillor for Manchester's New Cross ward. (1875) was a very exciting time in the development of this city. Right in the centre of Manchester, a massive space had been cleared, and over the next couple of years they set to work building this magnificent palace of civic pride, Manchester City Hall. This was where Charles Rollie would have come in his best bib and tucker. He'd have walked up these stairs. He'd have stopped to admire the mosaics, the bee, the symbol of industry, the cotton flower, the source of Manchester's wealth. He'd have stopped, perhaps, to admire these fabulous murals showing different events in Manchester's history. And then at last, he'd have got to work, sitting on endless council committees, housing committees, recreation committees, sanitation committees, dedicated to the business of making life better, dedicated to the business of getting things done. The first task in hand was slum clearance. The second, building homes fit for people to live in. Council houses like these in Anita Street, built in 1894. All right,
The first important improvement we've got here, these aren't back-to-backs, all right? That's not two houses butt joined together, that's one house, which means that finally we've got light coming in from two directions, we've got good ventilation, we've got a good flow of air. The second important improvement, all the houses in these streets had running water. They had their own tap. A fact of which the city councillors were so proud that when they came to name the street, they called it originally not Anita Street, but Sanitary Street. Add an S at the beginning and an RY at the end, you've got sanitary. Not surprisingly, the locals changed it to Anita later to save their blushes.
It seems so straightforward, an indoor tap, we take it for granted. And yet behind the scenes, the sheer labour involved in tapping fresh water to Manchester, it takes your breath away. High up in the Pennines, southeast of the city, are the Longdendale Reservoirs, the first great reservoirs built to fix the problem of Manchester's water supply. River valleys were dammed off, conduits built to carry the water under force of gravity into the city. Here was a feat of engineering like the pyramids of old, a wonder of this new industrial age. What happened in Anita Street was just the start, and it was hardly luxury. No bathrooms yet in people's homes. Just down the road, though, Charles Rollie secured funding for a public bathhouse, a place you could go for a hot scrub and a steam and a swim. It's long since been destroyed. But south of the city, a bathhouse survives, Victoria Public Baths. And it's quite simply a wonder. A palace dedicated to the virtues of health and hygiene.
I love this place. It's stood rotting for the last 15 years or so, but we've heard recently enough money's been raised to start the process of restoration. And it's a blessing, because this place, like no other, reminds us of that wonderful time in our history when we gloried in raising and spending money for the public good.
You look at the detail in this place, the tiles, the stained glass. It's a celebration of self-belief. You can't help but populate these rooms in your imagination. They echo with ghosts, a whiskered man in the Turkish baths, women calling for more hot water in the tubs that used to stand on the women's gallery. Such a contrast from the squalor of the urban slums. 1 century on, but this was a whole new world.